And we're going.
And we're live.
Welcome to the first episode of #Wild. This is a podcast we've been meaning to do for, 2 years?
This first episode might be a mess. We apologize ahead of time.
Hopefully you're finding this 2 years from now and we've really cleaned up our act. And
That's just like the hope.
honestly. But no, honestly, we're starting a podcast because we feel like we have just so much content. And we're really excited to do this episode. We feel like it's the perfect time to do it just because this topic is really hot.
Especially throughout social media.
Yeah.
Just I don't even know news sources at this point.
Honestly. I've seen news reports about it at this point.
A trend.
So we're doing Area 51, and which is, you probably knew that before because we put it in the description when we upload this. So we're really excited to tell this story and dive into all of the aspects of it, because we're both obsessed with aliens.
To say the least.
To say the least. I think for slightly different reasons.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like I'm going to let you tell your side first. Wait, we should introduce ourselves. People don't even know our names.
Jesus Christ.
Wow. This is going really well. Did we say the name of the podcast?
Oh, I said it,
okay,
at the
cool.
beginning.
So we got that out.
We're
we
#Wild.
Don't matter.
No, not at all.
We don't matter.
Okay. So, I'm Matt.
I'm Susana.
It's very nice to meet you all.
Now that we got that out of the way.
Honestly.
Our intro.
So I'm obsessed. I've always been obsessed with outer space and just everything that comes with it. And the more I learned about it, the more aliens just became instead of a possibility, just an inevitability. There's obviously life out there. And whether it's intelligent or not is another debate. And whether we've been visited by it is, of course, obviously another debate. But just from a standpoint of, I love astronomy, I love looking up at the night sky, I'm obsessed with constellations and space travel and NASA, the moon landing, all of that. So I guess I come at it from that perspective, but I'm totally obsessed with the topic. How about you? Why do you love aliens? What are your says?
You just want me to dive right into it.
I just want you to,
Well, I'm gonna save my actual main story for later, but I think pretty much the same thing. Honestly, I started getting really into just outer space as well. I lived in the middle of nowhere, back east, and there was nothing to do but really be outside all day, and then at night have a bonfire and just stare at the stars.
Yeah.
And I feel after a while, doing that for so long, you kind of just, you start to wonder what is up there, and also, I would also get to points where I'd be super overwhelmed, and I would just look up and be if there's more up there, that would be so dope.
Yeah. I know. I already
So
did it too.
dope.
We've already got 2. We're gonna try not to curse, but it's really
it's
just
so hard.
kind of natural for us.
And just, I guess it just seems my problems were not as important because I felt there's so much going on up there, and I just wanted to know what exactly it was. And then something happened later on in my life where I really started to question things. So I'll get into
We'll
that
get to
later.
that. We'll definitely get to that.
I got my own story coming up.
So, no matter where you're coming at this from, you've definitely heard about the Area 51 raid that is taking place on September 20th. It started as a Facebook, as a joke on Facebook, really, but it has over 2 million respondents at this point.
3.4 now.
Over 3 million people who are either interested or have said they're gonna attend.
Which is #Wild.
Which is absolutely wild. But we just have a lot to say on the topic. First of all, don't get killed. If you're gonna go anywhere near Area 51,
I feel like just don't do it. Like, that's just a horrible idea.
Honestly.
Like, just to be perfectly honest, the guy who did it, he just thought it was hilarious.
Yes.
And it was a total joke. People obviously don't get sarcasm nowadays. Or the people
my
that,
God.
there are obviously a good amount that do and are clearly liking this just for the sole fact. But there
No,
are
for
definitely
sure.
some, like, people out there who are dead ass about this.
I just think
that is hilarious.
when you get 2 million people
Like,
for anything,
you're gonna
like
at least have, like,
1%
no,
of 2 million
yeah.
people is 20,000.
Yeah.
So
There are going to be at least 20,000 people showing up at that gate, and I feel so
That's-
sorry for them.
that's so wild. But
a horrible
the
idea.
creator of the event, he said the reason he started the event was the Rogan Pod.
Yeah.
The Bob Lazar, Joe Rogan Pod, which hopefully you've seen at this point. If you haven't,
Or at least heard about Bob Lazar.
yes.
Because this is a huge part of why this is all happening right now.
Yeah, Bob Lazar, we'll get into him too.
Yeah.
But before we do that, we just want to talk about Area 51 as a whole. You went there recently. Was it before the Rogan Pod or just like right around the time of the Rogan Pod, right?
It was actually, I guess like right around the time of the Rogan Pod. I had been wanting to go to Area 51 as a joke for like years now. The last time I was in Vegas, before this previous time, previously before this time, I was like, oh, like, I want to go, and I was like, obviously joking, because I know it's just a gate that you can't get past, but this time, we actually were like, okay, let's do this, like, a couple of, friends and my boyfriend and I were like, yeah, let's just go, we're already in Vegas, it's not that far, so we headed over there, we headed to the extraterrestrial
You drive
highway.
north from Vegas.
Yes. For at least like an hour and like, I want to say like 40 minutes, and then you get to extraterrestrial highway.
Yeah.
You end up in Rachel, and then you literally have to take the sketchiest back road to just it's like 20 miles. On this road, you don't even know if you're going in the right direction, and you just keep going straight forever, and
Jesus
it's just
Christ.
dust and disgusting. My car was wrecked. Like,
Oh
just
my God.
so much dirt. And we get to the gate, and at first, my boyfriend was like, oh, yeah, like, apparently there's these white trucks that stop you from going in, and I'm sitting there like, yeah, right, like, we're not gonna see shit. There's probably just gonna be a gate, and we're not gonna know, like, what's, like, on the other side, and that's gonna be it, we're just gonna turn around. We get there, and we see nothing at first. But this car is like speeding away, and we're like, whoa, and he almost hits us.
Jesus Christ.
And we're like, oh, okay, that was weird. Like, this like douche just almost slammed into us, like, super cash. And then we get even closer. We didn't even like think about it. And then we get closer to the actual entrance, and we look up on this hill, and we see this like car just coming up over the hill. And it just, like, stops and stays there. And there are these white trucks that literally just surround the entrances. And they take time, like they take shifts, like, obviously.
Yeah.
Because they have to stay there 24/7, which I didn't know this. And at first I was like, okay, that's kind of creepy. But, you know, maybe they won't, like, interact with us. It'll be fine.
Right.
So as we get closer to the gate, they're literally inching closer onto the mountain, and we're like, okay, this is getting sketchy, like, maybe we won't get any closer. But we get out of my car, we start walking up this hill, and I started telling people, like, hey, like, don't take your phones out. Like, I just have, like, a weird feeling about it. Like, don't take your phones out, because it says no cameras.
Right.
There has to be a reason for that. And as soon as, of course, no one listens to me. As soon as the first person pulls out their camera, the truck turns on its like high beam,
Yeah.
and starts flashing us and starts to drive towards us, and we instantly just put down all of our phones, and we're like, okay, like, we're not gonna push this any further. They stop, this other guy comes, like 10 minutes later, they switch shifts, the guy's watching us again. So we're like, all right, let's just peace out. We head back into Rachel, the town.
Right.
And we go to this little restaurant. And then we literally talked to the main, like, the guy, I guess he was, like, the manager or something.
Yeah.
We told him we had just gone to the gate, and
Hold on, before, you went to, like, it was the back way? Is there, like,
There's, I guess, like, a couple of different entrances. We went to definitely the most ghetto one. I mean, like, there's no cute entrance, to be perfectly honest.
Right.
The main one. We went to this back-ass sketchy one where those trucks are.
Yeah.
But yeah, we end up in this restaurant, and this guy who works there, he was like, oh, you guys didn't go to the main entrance. You guys went to the back entrance. That's where, back in January, a guy actually got shot at the entrance you guys went to.
Crazy.
And they killed him because he just blasted through, because there's no gate there. So he just blasted through and went in, and they tried to stop, and he didn't stop, and they just
Oh my God.
They just took him down, and I was like, yep. Well,
That's what'll happen to you if you storm Area 51.
yeah, I was like, well, it's a good thing we left before that could happen. And then another family actually was held at gunpoint just for taking photos. So I'm actually shook that we even got away
Just like
with
walked
the phone.
away.
Yeah, that we even got away.
You went to the front entrance after, right?
Yeah, then he was like, oh, if you go a mile down the road from the restaurant, I'm like giving people directions, like, and this is probably gonna be the worst.
No. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're gonna go to the right,
to the right location, yeah.
You should
right
at least
now,
go to the right place.
The Area 51 location is on the right.
Please don't die. Please just don't step over that line. Don't run at them. We'll get into that later too.
So he was like, oh yeah, like go to this other entrance. It's literally a mile down the road. It's on the right, and then it's 10 miles down. And we're like, okay, so of course our do it anyway.
You gotta go.
After hearing 2 horror stories,
Right.
we're like, and we're going. So we get to that entrance, and this is the like historical one with like the gate and then the stop sign, and like there's little like I guess like
The signs and
bunker houses.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're called, but where people actually stay there like overnight to monitor the gates. And we didn't realize we were being like watched,
Surveilled,
and
like,
surveillance,
yeah.
and they could hear from inside of our cars basically, because that's how crazy their surveillance is. So they basically heard us talk about walking out the car, and we were like, yeah, let's just do it. Let's just go touch the sign. They were probably sitting there like, we were laughing about being Postmates. We're like, yeah, we'll just tell them like we're Chick-fil-A or something. Like they'll take us in. It's fine. I literally get out of the car. I step out of the car. Instantly, a door opens, like from one of the houses, and you can't see inside because the windows are mirrored, so you can only see yourself essentially. And I didn't know that was a door. And the door just starts opening, and I'm like, oh, hell no. So I just get right back in the car, and I'm like, nope, this is too sketchy. I didn't know there's actually people there. I mean, which sounds kind of dumb now, because obviously they're...
Because they murder you.
Because, yeah, like, after hearing those stories...
Because they murder you. So, just for the purposes of getting out of the way, Area 51 is obviously a super top secret military installation. And...
very remote location.
A lot of things have been declassified over the years. We know a lot of spy planes were developed there. We definitely know a lot of top secret projects go through there.
And then the people that work there are actually flown in privately.
Yes, that's a whole aspect of the Bob Lazar story because back in the 80s, no one really knew about Area 51.
Pause for 2 seconds.
Yes.
The camera just died?
Yep.
It just died.
Mm-hmm.
No, it didn't. No, it didn't.
It totally did. So if we don't have video for this, sorry about that, guys. Terrible.
We should pause it.
Okay.
Pause it here.
Sorry, guys. Camera died. Yeah, probably have a lot of those.
We talked about Area 51 being a remote location that is highly surveillance, and it is
mostly for development of top secret military weapons, basically.
Yeah.
We know a lot of the stealth bombers came out of there over the last.
A lot of nuclear testing.
Oh yeah, all over. You can look at maps of like the entire thing now, because we have satellites up there.
Well, because for the longest time they denied
that it existed.
But then people started getting sick at the location that they were working at, and they literally were like, hey, we're kind of all dying.
This was the middle of the 90s, and then in open court, the government was still...
denying that it was a thing.
Yeah.
They were like, yeah, no, we don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, with the place...
So they lied under oath, essentially.
Yeah.
And so then they got caught, and they were like, all right, fine, we have to
caught. They didn't fully admit it until, I think it was like 2013,
Wait, really?
Honestly.
Wait, what?
Honestly.
No.
Like we had so much.
2013?
It was really recent. It was like crazy recent.
So people just
No.
everyone was like
Like
a speculation in
fucking knew. They were just still being coy until 2013. Like we've had satellite photos since like 2005. I don't know, mid 2000s. I don't want to say a year, but yeah, like as soon as we had private satellites up there.
That long.
I know.
Just stop lying. Just stop lying. This goes for every aspect of life. Like if you guys deny some shit for that long and everyone knows, like just fess up.
That's actually a significantly good transition into Bob. Bob.
Yeah. Okay.
So Bob went on to the Joe Rogan podcast about a month ago, and Bob's interesting because Bob is credited with being one of the first people to actually blow the whistle on Area 51 existing at all. So like whatever else about his story may be true or not, he is one of the first people who was like, hey, Area 51, it's right fucking there, middle of the Nevada desert.
It exists.
And everyone was like, oh. They actually had to seize a bunch of land because of him. You can't really tell the full story of Area 51 without bringing up Bob. But he's so interesting because he's
basically why everything that's going on right now is going on.
Yeah.
Because he just was like, this shit exists and everyone needs to know about it.
Yeah.
But there's
so much about Bob.
He went fully into this. I'm gonna be the first also to hear this with you guys because I want to be like shocked. So I was like, no, let's wait.
There's a lot that's not being talked about.
Yeah, he went digging.
Yeah. So let's get into that. I'm just gonna tell you guys basically from the beginning everything I was able to dig up about Bob, and some of this is inferring, but I'm going to give you a full timeline of everything that went down in the 80s, because it's all really interesting. And then at the end, I'll clear up a couple misconceptions about Bob, and then we'll talk about. Do you want to say real quick? I know you're not completely sold on Bob.
I mean, here's the thing is, like, I don't really believe people until I have facts. And
Proof.
I believe him on the facts that have been confirmed by other people in the sense of, like, the element that appeared that he spoke about.
Element 115.
Years before.
Sure.
And the bone scanner.
Which was part of the security network at Area 51.
That was found, that everyone denied at first, then later was discovered. That stuff is like, okay, that's credible.
Sure.
But I'm not a big, like, word of mouth person. Like, I need facts.
Yes, honestly.
I need solid.
I brought as many Bob facts as I could find.
But the thing is, like, I want to believe him. I really.
I did too.
The way, and also the way that he talks is just so.
He sounds credible, right?
He's just so cash, and I would feel like that if anybody was to believe somebody about UFOs and aliens in Area 51, it would have to be somebody that casual.
Right.
Because you're not going to believe someone that's like, oh my god, there's so many aliens. You're just going to be like, right, bitch. And you're going to move on with your life.
Yeah.
But he's so credible and seems so credible because he does it in such a poised way.
Yeah.
When he delivers information.
He's very.
But him as a person, I don't know enough about him. So I can't say, like, if he's full of shit or not, or if he's just an amazing sociopathic con man. Like, so that's where you come in with the info. I don't know anything about this, so...
So I went into this. I really wanted it to be true. So I'll say that up front. But I went really deep. I wasn't going to believe it without facts. So let's start. January 26, 1959. Robert Scott Lazar, full name, we'll just call him Bob from now on, is born in Florida. We'll jump all the way to the 70s because in 1976 he graduated from high school. So a physicist called Stanton Friedman, we'll bring him up a couple times, but he went digging into Bob's high school grades, and Bob graduated 261st in his class of 369. This gets important when we talk about MIT and Caltech, but... 1976, Bob starts to attend Pierce College, which is here in LA. It still exists. it's a junior college, but yeah, he took physics there, took some sciences. But 1978, says he has a bachelor's from Pacifica University, which is actually a correspondence university that got shut down for selling people diplomas. So that's where he got that's where he got his
Nice.
bachelor's.
Where can I get one?
Right. So that gives Bob 4 years to attain 2 master's degrees from Caltech and MIT. There's no real record of him ever living in Cambridge or anywhere in Massachusetts.
But okay, so also what he claims is that when he came out
Yes.
about everything with Air 51,
Yes.
he claims that the FBI wiped all
Wiped
of his stuff
his
clean,
school records.
which they have access. They can do that, yes. But it's like that's. I feel like that's the first thing you would
It's
say.
the first red flag
I
for
like
sure.
playing devil's advocate. I want to believe him. I really, really do. And I believe in aliens and UFOs and Air 51 and like.
I think
Yeah, but
I think at some point we can get past the education thing.
Yeah.
But let's keep moving because there's still a lot to cover. In 1980, the summer of 1980, right around when he would have finished his master's at Caltech, he marries Carol Strong. They're living in Woodland Hills, California at the time, so it checks out. He could have just graduated and then on to MIT. There's no record of him living in Cambridge or anywhere around it, like I said. But in 1982, 2 years later, he would have finished, and that is when he starts working at Los Alamos. Los Alamos is tricky because he definitely worked at Los Alamos, and he claims he was there as a physicist. The only 2 real pieces of proof that he did work at Los Alamos are the newspaper article that establishes him, that calls him a physicist in the article.
and he knew his way around.
He did.
Like,
He
perfectly.
did. And there's a
That's hard to
phone
do.
book full of employees and contractors, but he's listed as a contractor in that phone book. So he definitely worked at the lab. Who knows if he worked for the lab, but he was definitely there, and that's a big point. Because that establishes that he does potentially have Q clearance, and Q clearance is civilian top secret clearance. So he's definitely working at Los Alamos Lab in 1982. He meets Ed Teller. Ed Teller is the father of the hydrogen bomb, and he introduced himself to Ed Teller and his newspaper article. Ed Teller was reading his newspaper article at the time that he introduced himself, and so they chatted about jet engines for a while, according to Bob. Let's skip ahead a bit to 1985, and this is where it starts to get really interesting. In 1985, Bob had bought into a brothel in Reno. It was called Honeysuckle Ranch, and an article later published in Omni magazine says that the investment was so profitable that he didn't have to return to full-time employment for a while. So after he left Los Alamos, he's just part owner of a whorehouse for a while, and that's funding everything. Also in 1985, he borrowed a ton of money, upwards of $60,000 from Los Alamos National Bank alone. He also borrowed money from his friends and relatives. And in 1986, we start to figure out why. In 1986, Bob married Tracy Merck in Las Vegas. And yes, he was still married to Carol Strong. 2 days later, Carol Lazar, April 21st, 1986, Carol Lazar is found dead in her garage in Las Vegas from carbon monoxide poisoning. No autopsy was done, and it was ruled a suicide.
Oh, Bob.
2 days. 2 days after the marriage. So Tracy and Bob, moved right into that house. Right into the house where Carol died. And 3 months later, July 21st, Bob files for bankruptcy, Chapter 7 bankruptcy, liquidation of his old business, which was a photo shop. And cited, oh, this is great, he cited loss of business and loss of spouse as the reasons for his bankruptcy.
Wow.
Then,
Convenient. There's so much convenience going on here.
October 12th, a couple months later, Bob marries Tracy again.
Back at it again with Tracy.
Again. Bob has already married Tracy. This time he marries her.
Like, legitimately? So, like,
again.
Vegas didn't work? Like, was that, like, not the thing?
No. They'll get divorced later on, and the divorce proceedings cite both marriages. It's super interesting, though, because Tracy used a different name. She used the name Jackie Evans for this marriage. And I think it was just because of the bankruptcy. She couldn't be tied to him because he was citing loss of spouse.
Right.
So they just married again. So in 1987, the bankruptcy went final. He basically absconded with $170,000 in assets, and your debts are. I don't know the full bankruptcy process. I didn't go into that.
Right.
But.
Commercial break.
Yeah, we're gonna go on a quick commercial break because our technology hates us. We are back. Thanks for listening to that commercial break. Gotta keep the show funded. So we got to 1987. The bankruptcy went final.
I have a question.
Yeah, what's up?
So, how old was he around this time?
He's still in his 20s.
Because, like, I don't know if I got this information wrong, but, like, wasn't he living at home and he, like, put, like, a jet engine or something in his car?
So that
and
happened.
One, like, found him.
That happened before Los Alamos. He put a jet engine in his car before he moved to Los Alamos.
So this all happened
and then
before he was even married.
The newspaper. No, he was married in 1980 to Carol the first time, right?
Just kidding.
So.
I'm like, when do you have time for all this?
Right.
Bro, you did a lot. That's a lot.
Dude, he does so much. This is also around the time he was starting his annual fireworks display in the desert. It's called Desert Blast.
He was just so ambitious.
Very much so.
You're ambitious enough, you'll be 88. That's what I've learned.
So that was the middle of 1988. They purchased another house. They move into that house. Default on the Angreta house, or sorry, the Las Vegas house. Sorry, Angreta was the street they lived on. Yeah, I went that deep.
I see that. If I need anybody stalked, I will call you.
Honestly, Tom Mahood did most of this for me, so thank you, Tom. Tom is one of the chief Bob debunkers. We'll get into him more later. So later that year in 1988 is when Bob would have started working at Area 51. Specifically December. So during his work at Area 51, this is where it gets really wild. If it wasn't wild already.
No.
So Bob begins work at Area 51. He specifically says he was employed at a base called S4. It was built into the side of the mountain. You can really get this part of the story from him. He tells it better than I will.
There's a lot of interviews.
Basically, he worked on one of 9 flying discs that were there, or flying craft. Some of them were discs, others were shaped like other things. And he was specifically employed trying to reverse engineer the propulsion system of the craft, which uses element 115 as the fuel, uses an anti-gravity technology to envelop itself in a gravitational field and basically pull itself towards its destination. It's pretty wild claims. Not completely impossible, though. We'll get into that when we talk about misconceptions, though, because I do want to talk about Bob was really only there for 6 days total, which is where he kind of
Area 51?
Yes.
He was only there for 6 days?
Total. 6
I thought
shifts.
This dude was there for like years.
6 shifts. He says in the Joe Rogan interview that it was about 6 months. It was not 6 months. It was 3 months. And
So like 2
it was
shifts
3
a month.
months. He went there 6 times total.
Okay, that is wild.
Right?
I thought this dude was there like 9 to 5, 6 months straight.
And he says that his hours were really irregular. He would sometimes go in, I guess, in the afternoon, and he would sometimes go in at 11 p.m. as whenever they called him in. And so,
What?
so day by day, basically, paperwork the first day, briefing the second day. The third day, he's introduced to his lab partner Barry, and they talk about the propulsion system. The fourth day, he walks in through the hangar bay, sees the craft itself, touches the craft, is reprimanded for testing the craft. I think that was also when the bay doors might have been open, and he saw all 9. The fifth day, he saw the test flight, and the sixth day, something significant happened. The 6th day is when he went inside the craft itself. And there were no more. That was the last one. And then the 7th day was him getting debriefed. This was after. So March 22nd, 1989.
Worked at the first 6 shifts.
March 22nd and
Count?
March 22nd. I mean, if you see if you're working on an alien spaceship, like 6 times is enough, I guess.
Yeah, I guess.
But March 22nd and March 29th are the days that he took his friends and his ex-wife Tracy into the middle of the desert to see the UFO. He has footage of the UFO, and it's there at the exact time and date he said it would be there. We'll get into...
Wait, he took his family and friends
Yes.
on a field trip to Air 51.
Yeah. To watch the UFO.
Right.
This was after supposedly he wasn't he was not being allowed to come back after his 6th shift or whatever.
Fucking show and tell. That's not how Air 51 works.
Right.
Come and look at my space.
Right. So then they do it a third time, April 5th. They did it a third time. They went out to look at this thing. They got caught this time.
What? So they got caught this time. So hold up. They got through 20 miles of no security. What'd he do? Hide them in his trunk?
He said at one point,
order a plane?
I think he was being stupid and they took an RV out. I don't know.
They literally, there's 2 checkpoints within a 20-foot section of a gate. You have to, you get checked once, then you get checked again.
But that's now. I mean, I think the geography was a little bit different. But
No. I mean, that's just the entrance.
Sure.
They have to drive 20 miles to get to the actual base.
Right.
So how did they not get caught? And then when you get there, you have to have a bone scanner.
Well, they weren't in.
He just hit
they weren't in the
jacket?
restricted. I guess they weren't in the restricted
Damn.
zone, and they hadn't seized as much of the area. But there's video footage of him he has the disc on video. It doesn't do much while he has it on there, but it does kind of flit around. Yeah, very briefly. I don't think, and they have some other
Did it look trash? Was it trash?
It's not great. It's not great.
Never are.
It kind of looks.
I don't get it. Why can't with the technology we have nowadays and all the photographers we have on Instagram, can somebody get a good
decent
photo of
fucking picture of a goddamn spaceship
once? Damn, everything's blurry as
the
fuck.
The best 2 we have are released from our government, the gimbal and the Tic Tac videos.
What are those? What are those?
So in 2013 when they were declassifying all this shit.
Oh, that one's the one that goes upside. It looks like a pill, right?
Yeah, it's the one in the water. It goes in the water.
I didn't know that.
And then the gimbal is it's the one that's just sitting there in the middle of a 120 mile an hour winds, but it's just hovering.
Chilling.
Yeah.
Smobbing.
And then it turns. It's weird.
Let me see these.
I'll show you them.
I've only seen really awful photos and videos, and I actually.
I mean, they're still not great, but these are they're filmed by the Air Force, so they're legit.
On flip phones. I don't get it. Can someone with a good iPhone take photos of an ant on a leaf and it come out perfect?
This was also in 1989, so cameras were
talking about,
trash.
like, current
No,
day.
I know. So
Anyways.
next day, Bob is debriefed, basically kicked out of the program and told they're gonna fuck his life up. That's the middle of April. So May of 1989, a couple important things happen. Tracy and Bob separate and eventually will get divorced. Bob's first interview, this was the one he did in Silhouette as Dennis, under a pseudonym. They didn't change his voice though, which was super funny. Like it's him and his voice, and you can see the outline of his glasses. And you're like, I sure wonder who that could be.
Like, no, fuck this voice stuff. It's fine. It's fine. Just let the footage roll.
And so, and one other significant thing happened in May, and that was an article appeared in Scientific American detailing the possibility of creating super heavy elements. November 1989 is when Bob is actually identified on a news broadcast. He appears as himself, not as Dennis, and he apparently had recorded this interview a while before, and they had sort of sat on it, but I guess there's a really strange attempt on Bob's life here. It doesn't seem like a government hit. According to him, he was getting on a freeway and a car pulled alongside him and was like trying to race him on the on-ramp, and then someone in the car shot out his tire and then just left him on the side of the road. That doesn't sound like a government hit to me. Like,
no, they would have literally just like bombed your car and made it flip into like a ravine.
Yeah, no.
And, like, oops, and then gone about their day.
Anyway, so because that happened, he decided that he was going to go public with it for his own protection. That's the end of 1989. June 5th, 1990. The whole end of 1989, he's on a bunch of like different radio call-in shows and like other type of shows.
Media push.
Around the turn of the year, I think in February, he was offered a network in Japan gave him $5,000 for the rights, for like the exclusive rights to his story, and then he dipped on them at the last second, but kept the money.
What a trustworthy fellow.
Sure. So then, June 5th, 1990, Bob is arrested for pandering. Pandering is just the legal term for pimping. So if you're counting now, that's two brothels. He had set up a new brothel.
Commercial break.
Alright, we'll be right back. Hey, we're back.
And we're back.
We just have so many sponsors.
Like, we're just...
Honestly. Okay, sorry. Bob was arrested for pimping.
I love that's where you left off and picked right back up at. But yes.
Bob was arrested for pimping June 5th, 1990. He had set up, this is so great, he had set up this operation with a prostitute named Tony Bullock. They had rented out apartments next to each other, and they drilled a hole between the two apartments.
Shut up, no.
So the clients could enter in one door and then leave out the other apartment.
That's how we do podcasts.
Oh my God, yes. We'll bring our guests in. We'll bring our guests into one apartment.
Yep.
Totally flip them out. So, June 18th, 1990, Bob pleads guilty to the pandering charge. July 25th, 1990, Bob's divorce from Tracy/Jackie, love that, is finalized. August 20th, 1990, he's sentenced for pandering. No jail time, just 6 months of probation. Some community service. He's ordered. Oh my God. He's ordered to take therapy and stay away from brothels. Love that.
Tasteful.
Very much. September 13th, 1990. Jackie Evans quitclaims the house that she bought in her name back to Bob. Remember, this is the house he quitclaimed in the first place. And that's really where the interesting stuff kind of leaves off. In 1991, they released. Oh my God.
Sorry.
Hi, this is Manson.
He won.
In 1991, they released more Bob footage. By 1993, they had filmed the Lazar tape, which they sold for $30 a pop at the time. Him and George Knapp and I guess Gene Huff. We haven't really talked that much about Gene. I don't really want to get into it that deep. There's only a couple other things here. In 2003, United Nuclear, his business, was raided by the FBI. In 2006, he was sentenced via that raid charged in 2006 with violating the Federal Hazardous Material. Wow, Jesus Christ. Federal Hazardous Substances Act. He was selling polonium-210, which is a very highly radioactive element. So in 2007, he's sentenced for that. Wow, I'm getting tired.
750?
No, $7,500 fine, and 3 years probation. So then in July 19th, 2017, his business is raided again by the FBI. This one's interesting because Bob and Jeremy Corbell, who's the maker of his documentary, were having a conversation on the 18th about Element 115 on his property. Bob thinks that, or I guess probably thought, I'm not sure if he still thinks this, but that the conversation they had about the Element 115 had caused the FBI to raid his business, looking for the Element 115. But someone dug up the police record of the raid, because a lot of people were claiming that the raid never happened, but the raid did happen, but they had the warrant since the 17th, so they were going to do it anyway. So that brings us to the end of the Bob Lazar story. He went on the Rogan Pod recently. He had his documentary come out recently. We went through all of that because I think it's important for you all to see who Bob is, and for us to
below what people are just focusing on.
Yeah, exactly.
They're literally just focusing on there's this guy who worked at Area 51 and he sounds credible, and I didn't know most of this, so now I do have a different perspective of him.
It gives you a different perspective because it establishes his pattern of deception. Real quick, I want to touch on
fraud, bro.
I want to touch on Element 115 and the couple things he clings to as sort of his proof now. The first one, which we can't really debunk, is the bone scanner, because he did know about that.
Right.
There are a number of his critics who believe he did work at Area 51, but that he made up the entirety of S4 and the disk program and the flying saucers and that whole thing. Anyway, Element 115 is something he clings to, which is really, really interesting. I remember I mentioned around the time of his first interview, there was a Scientific American article about creating heavy elements.
Right.
That article specifically mentions that around Element 114, there's a it's called the Island of Stability. Basically, once you go above uranium, every element is unstable and will decay radioactively. And then in between that range, between 112 and 116, it's really between 112 and 114, there's a so-called Island of Stability, where there will be stable elements there, that don't decay radioactively. So he claims that there's a stable isotope of 115, which we haven't found yet, but that won't decay radioactively, at least not for years, which is still theoretically possible. But it's important to note also where Bob was wrong about element 115. He specifically said that to use element 115, the alien craft bombarded it with protons, which turns it into element 116.
Interesting.
He said that element 116 then decayed into antimatter,
Interesting.
which is an interesting claim because element 116 does not decay into antimatter, at least not any form of element 116 we found. There are elements that do decay into antimatter, like radioactive iodine, I think is one. But so far, element 116 is not one. So he did predict that there would be an element 115, but that's sort of a really simple prediction based on the fact that we can synthesize elements. So there's...
Right.
And he's also not the first one to say it, which he claims. That Scientific American article came out May 1989. That was the first time he went on his interview with Dennis, and he didn't mention element 115, at least not in depth in that interview.
I feel like I'm just like... Now I have to rewatch everything.
Yeah,
just
you
so
should
I can
too.
like have a new perspective, because this is crazy. I definitely... He just seemed so credible, and now it's like...
The other...
I feel like once you learn the personality of someone, like, I feel like the personality of someone is so... Manson. Like, the personality of someone is so important to know before you start crediting what they're saying, because now I'm like, I don't know if he's legit, because, I mean, I went through... Like I said, he seemed so calm, and he was so calm and collected, but it's like, so are sociopaths.
I know.
Like, you know what I mean? It's like they can make you believe anything. And another thing that and this is devil's advocate, because I believe in aliens 100%, but another thing that he said, which could win over audiences, is like, oh yeah, I worked on a UFO, super cash, but like, I think I saw this little thing, like this little creature, human-like
That
thing.
was crazy.
That was like 4 feet tall with like long arms, but I'm not sure. And I'm like, if you want people to think that they like you're credible, you're gonna be like, yeah, I think I saw an alien, but I'm not sure. I'm not gonna credit the alien.
That's one part of his story that he's really backed off of since the 90s. He was really sure in the 90s, and now he's like, it was probably a dummy.
Yeah, but I think it's just funny because it's like, oh yeah, how is the best way for people to believe me? Oh yeah, I'm not gonna really focus on the alien part. I'm gonna focus on the spacecraft that I was working on.
Sure, yeah.
You know, like, it's almost like, oh, like, I think, you know, the idea of aliens is crazy too, even though I worked on 9 UFOs.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just like, if you're gonna convince people, that's like a way to do it.
Sure, I think some of this is just like reaction to his story, you know what I mean? Like, people who, like, if he talks about like the aliens, more crazy people will like contact him, maybe. I don't know. That could be a defense for him or not. Two more things. The gravitational waves. In the 80s, he claimed that gravity was two waves, gravity A and gravity B. What are we at?
There's a lot going on right now.
Okay. And he claimed overall that...
Pause. Can I pick this up?
Yeah.
Commercial break.
Okay, we're back.
Yeah.
From another commercial break.
Covered in cat hair.
Really quick, I just want to clear up a couple more things about Bob. He said that gravity was a wave back in the 80s. It's not a wave. There are gravitational waves. They do exist. They're caused by really gigantically massive objects like black holes or neutron stars eating each other. They can't be controlled in any way, which he said they could. They pass through entire planets. The only way we know about them is a super sensitive instrument called LIGO, somewhat ironically developed by Caltech. and it detects gravitational waves from billions of light years away. We're talking like other galaxies, which is just really cool by itself. He says we don't know what gravity is. We do know what gravity is. Gravity is the attraction of all mass to all other mass.
Facts.
The other thing he claimed was that gravity A was the strong nuclear force. I don't want to get into that too deep because it requires reading about quantum mechanics. Quantum mechanics is just stupid complicated and...
Yeah, please don't get into that. It's way too late for that.
Yeah.
My brain.
So I think we're just going to leave the Bob story there. How do you feel about Bob right now?
I mean, how I've been feeling throughout this entire thing. It's an emotional roller coaster.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, I still want to believe it because I do believe in aliens regardless. Do I believe his story particularly? I mean, I did at first, 100%.
Yeah.
I believe he's credible because of the way that he spoke and the way that he went about talking about it. And I liked the fact that he normalized it.
Yeah,
I will give him
he
that.
definitely worked at Area 51.
Yeah,
like,
no, totally. I mean, but, you know, like, he normalized, like, oh, you know, there's UFOs, there's aliens,
Yeah.
like, not a big deal. Like, I love that, because before, people would talk about it, and they would be deemed, like, crazy.
Yeah.
And that's, I think that's stupid, but, like, I like him for that, and I like him for coming out and talking about Area 51 and confirming, but his backstory is a little sketchy.
Very sketch.
It's a little sketchy.
There's just so much of a history of
like,
him.
I wouldn't hang out with him. That's all I gotta say. Like, before, I would have hung out with him and been like, "Ooh, tell me everything." But now I'm like,
honestly, though,
you
Bob,
might kill me
Bob,
in my garage.
if you want to come on the pod, you're more than welcome.
Oh. We said two very different reactions.
I would love to have Bob Lazar on the podcast if you want. Open invitation. He can sit next to me. It's okay. Cool. You've seen a UFO.
Wow, just throw me under the bus like that. It's fun. Yes. I believe so. I actually told this story for the first time out loud, actually. I haven't
heard this.
On the way to Air 51, I actually told the story out loud for the first time because I never actually said it before. And as I was saying it, I was like, wow, I sound freaking crazy. And I literally looked at everybody and I was like, I'm being serious. And they're like, we believe you. And I'm like, but I sound nuts. And they're like, but we believe you. And as I literally was telling the story, one of my friends who was actually there, I had posted we were going to Air 51, and she messaged me, and she was like, hey, remember when we saw a UFO? And I was like, I was just talking about that. I was just telling that story. I'm not freaking nuts. And they're like, we believe you. So, so this story, this is before I loved outer space and the universe and the idea of life on other planets, because it would be selfish to believe that we have this crazy amount of space and it's just
absolutely impossible.
Like, that's just selfish, and I feel like it's stupid, and you're probably like, you're just a self-centered person if that's what you believe. That you probably do believe you're the center of the universe, which is kind of sad. But I mean, you know, no tea. But like, no shade. But you know, it's fine. I was 17, and on the property I grew up on, we had like this like little paddock thing in front of the stables, and like I said, the only thing we could really do back in the day was like go outside and like hang out and look at stars, because like, what are you gonna do in the middle of the freaking woods? And we would lay there. It was me and three of my other friends, and we were just laying there, just looking at the stars, just, you know, talking about space and just like being like kids, I guess, being high schoolers and just being dumb. And we keep seeing this flashing light. And at first we were joking. We were like, oh, look, because it looked like a light that you would, like if someone was taking a photo of you, it looked like a flash.
Yeah.
And we started this whole joke of like, oh, guys, like that someone's taking a photo of us from like outer space. It's a Kodak moment in space. So we started doing like stupid poses And we're like, oh, like, just being dumb, fucking 17-year-olds.
Yeah.
And it starts getting really close to us. And I was like, yo, what? And like, we're in the middle of nowhere. Like, planes don't really, like, you see planes, but they're not, like, close to you. Like, the closest airport is, like, an hour away.
Yeah.
So it's not like here where planes are, like, hovering and we have helicopters. So at first I was like, maybe it's a helicopter, but it wasn't flashing like a helicopter. Like, the light went from, like, super bright to super dim. And then super bright to super dim. And I was like, what in the hell? Like, I've never seen that before.
Yeah. Wait,
so,
where were you? Sorry.
Connecticut.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so a lot of land. And like, the most you would see is, like, shooting stars or, like, comets. You'd have to actually, like, wait to, like, for the time and then, like, then go outside and then spot them with a telescope, all that stuff. So this was something I had never seen, and it wasn't moving like an airplane either. It wasn't, like, going at a slow pace and, like, flashing. It was, like, here and it was flashing, and then it'd go away, and then here and it was flashing and it would go away, and then, but it was the flash was getting lighter, and it was just getting brighter and brighter and brighter every time that it flashed, and it got to that point where it got super close to us, and we all just started running. Like, all of us started running, and mind you, I wasn't really, like, obsessed with aliens before this. I kind of, like dabbled in the idea of it, but I wasn't like, I'm obsessed with aliens and UFOs and I'm a believer. It was more of just like, we're not alone, and that's what I believe, and it's gonna stop there. And when this thing got super close to us, we all just booked it down this hill, and we're like, it felt like it was following us. Like, dead ass, it felt like it was following us. And I was like, yo, what is this thing? So we're running, we're all winded, and we're like, okay, like, we stopped running after, like, I want to say, like, 5 minutes. We look around, and we're like, okay, we don't think it's following us anymore. Like, and this isn't like there was no drones or anything, so it's not like there was at that time.
This is what, 2005?
Like 2000? No, I was
later.
I was 2008 or 9.
Okay.
And I was like, dude, this is freaking creepy. Like, what is happening right now? And I thought, I don't even know what I thought, honestly.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that's like, it wasn't an animal, for sure. And we were surrounded by animals.
You guys just, like, you just ran without talking about it, right? It was just, like...
We all just saw
bolted.
This thing being, like, just
getting really
giant
close
light
to you.
getting closer and closer to us, to the point where it was like, there's a fucking meteor coming down on us.
Sure, yeah.
Like, I thought maybe there was a meteor coming down. I thought maybe a plane was crashing. Like, that's how intense it was.
Yeah.
And I was like, yo, we gotta leave.
Yeah.
And we all felt it. We all just ran. And I was with people that wouldn't really act like that.
Right.
Like, one of my friends is very, like, she's very hard to, like...
Scare?
Convince. Yeah. The other one is very just like, oh, it's nothing. And then the guy we were with is just kind of like, he's never talked about aliens. Like, none of us ever talked about aliens before. It wasn't in our, like, train of topic ever. And then I thought we were in the clear, and I look up, and I see this triangle, and it has a light on every corner, and I literally just look up, and it was so fast, and I look down, and I'm like, run, everybody, run. I don't know what that is. I thought it was some, like, creepy spacecraft, like, human, like...
And it's above you at this point?
Huh?
It's above you at this point? Like,
it's above us.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, it was still pretty far away from us, but I could see it. It was plain sight. And it was black, and it was a triangle. And that's why I was like, it can't be a UFO. I mean, UFOs, as I know, are spheres or discs. Yeah, not a sphere. A disc. So I'm like, what in the hell? I thought it was some weird, like, creepy, like, person that was following us.
Yeah.
I don't know. So... we all start running, again, to the house. And I'm like, guys, just freaking go. I saw something. I don't know what I saw. It was freaking creepy. And I didn't know, like, UFOs came in triangle shapes. I had no idea. So when we got into the house, I took out my laptop immediately, and I was like, what is this thing? And this was back when there was barely any, like, there were photos, but, like, Google was still not popping too much, And I was, like, just typing in, like, different shape UFOs, like different shape like government crafts, like different shape planes. I thought it was a plane. but it was just sitting. It was just like, it wasn't moving. It was just sitting. And then I came across this one photo, and I was like, that's it. That's it. That's what I saw. And it was, I had, hold on.
No, it's fine.
I forget.
We're not going to be able, they're not going to be able to see it, so.
No, I know. I was just going to read
we
the
can
actual
maybe,
thing
oh,
of it.
yeah.
But you can, I don't know what you were going to ask, but.
Did you check, like, news reports the next day for, like, crashed?
No. Okay, so now I can find it. Back then, I couldn't find it.
Yeah.
So, it's called a black triangle UFO.
Yeah.
And, it's a class of unidentified flying objects with certain common features which have reportedly been observed during the 20th and 21st century.
Yeah.
So it's like new. It's like a new UFO.
Yeah. There's a lot of reports of triangles. Tom Mahood, the guy who debunked. Oh, we're not going to commercial.
No commercial.
We don't have.
Okay.
We're back. Again. Tom Mahood, the guy who pulled all the information out about Bob, went hunting for some triangle-shaped UFOs. I didn't read all about it, but there's definitely other sightings of triangles, for sure.
Yeah, I've never seen one again.
I'm fairly certain, I could be wrong about this, but the government at one point declassified like a triangle-shaped craft they were developing.
Yeah, I've seen that. I saw that now, but it didn't look like that because the under part, the lights, the way that they're set up, was not what the government has made.
Yeah.
It's literally like it's a triangle with like literally a light, and then like a middle light. It's not a government plane. And also, why would it want anything to do with us? That was the thing. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe I'm tripping and like.
No, for sure. There's no reason for a government craft to like.
4 people.
To follow you around. Like,
yeah, like 4 people. Like we went up to the stables. Like 100 times at this point. Like
it never happened before
nothing weird, nothing creepy, like just being degenerate children. And this was the first and last time we had gone up there. I was like, I don't know if I want to go up there again.
It's pretty fucking crazy. And like in terms of like the UFO sightings that seem credible, like the 2 videos the Pentagon released or whatever, and a lot of other ones, it seems like they're kind of just watching us. Like, they're not interfering with us.
No, honestly,
like, they're kind of... I don't believe... The abduction stories for me are just so... Or, like,
that's a lot.
Like, they're the ones that are, like, so cracked out to me. Yeah. And, like, maybe if you had your head fucked with by an alien, you would be cracked out. But, like, at the same time, it's just so... Those are the ones that are just, like, the hardest to believe. The ones that are the easiest to believe are the ones that are just, like, they're just sitting there watching us, waiting for something, I guess.
I just thought, like, maybe... I didn't... The thing is, like, also, energy-wise, feeling what I felt back in that time, it didn't feel like a threat. It was more just, like, unfamiliar. Therefore, it was scary. But I didn't feel like it was a threat. Do you know what I mean?
I do. I know exactly what you mean. Because there's a lot of people who actually describe it as like, a sense of foreboding and a sense of, like, them wanting to run away, but not as... In terms of, like, a sense of, like,
I'm getting
direct, yeah.
Like, literally just thinking about that feeling.
Yeah, I think, as a whole, I could believe that there's at least one race of aliens that knows we exist, and they're watching us to some degree. I think it gets a lot tougher when you get into, like, abductions.
Yeah, that is just, like I said, I'm a facts person. Like,
same.
I honestly don't think I would be where I'm at, like, looking so deep into aliens had that not happened to me. Because after that, I can say, like, that's where it all started. Like, was that moment. From there, it was kind of like an obsession.
Yeah.
Where it triggered a part of me that was like, what did I see? What is this? It's like you see something and you just want to know.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
It's like endless questions and no one's giving you answers. The internet was not giving
any
lot
help.
of information at the time. And so it started this obsession, and now, like, it's gotten to that point.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, I'm still not, like, insane about it, but would I
Sure.
want to meet an alien?
No,
100%. 100%. I'd be so down.
I don't want to meet an alien.
I so do. I have so many questions.
Aliens, if you're listening, you're welcome on the pod anytime. Just please don't, like, kill us or, like
I just
probe
want to be,
us.
abducted in, like, a
Like, if
way.
you want to come on the pod and just, like, talk.
Yeah, like, imagine an alien just being a homie. Like,
right?
That's what I picture. I don't
down.
picture them being, like...
I'm down with that.
Yeah, alien versus predator. I picture them being, like, dead ass, we come in peace. Like, you know what I mean?
So...
this is why this, and this is happening.
So I'm a huge skeptic in most things. I tend to try to keep that viewpoint. Even with things I want to believe. Like Bob Lazar's story, it's why I dug so deep.
It's me.
Yeah, I could totally believe that there's an alien race waiting and watching to see how we develop, but in much more the sense that we watch things like chimps and other primates and watch them develop, or
and cells. We watch atoms and
sure, and we have lab rats and all that shit.
Plants, things of different species of us.
Super interesting theory. That humanity's purpose is just to exist long enough to create artificial intelligence. That we are. Someone said. Terrible,
purpose.
Right?
Ew.
Someone who came up with this theory has this great quote, and it's something like, Joe Rogan loves this quote. It's like we are the sex organs of the machine world.
Ew.
I know. Horrible thought. I hate it.
No. I don't believe we're supposed to know our purpose.
Well, I mean, but that could totally be it. The other thing is we could be in a simulation. I'm sure we'll do pods.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. A simulation.
A simulation?
No.
Okay, we're gonna have to do a podcast on. We're gonna have to do a podcast on simulations, guys. It's not ideal. But
we should do a whole pod about purpose, because I got some shit.
In a couple ways, it could be ideal. We'll go. That should be a fun one.
Yeah.
Let's wrap this one up though, because we are running a little bit longer than we hoped.
Yeah.
But we really enjoyed this. Honestly, It's been really fun.
Yeah. I feel like I learned a lot, and I got to tell my UFO story. I've told the story like more times in the past 2 weeks.
Than in the past
since I was 17.
What?
So
Yeah, 10 years. Yeah.
It's wild. I literally didn't tell anybody when it happened.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
hopefully nobody thinks I'm crazy. If you do, fuck off.
I mean, it's not like that crazy of a fucking story. It's.
So you don't think I'm crazy? You don't think that that's I mean, you know me.
I don't think you're crazy, and I also think it.
You know me, and I love playing devil's advocate. Literally, I was like, oh, this is a government plane.
Honestly.
When it happened.
Honestly, most UFOs are government planes, guys, but it can't be all of them.
I just the way that this thing was moving, we didn't have the technology.
Yeah.
There's no way, especially back in 2007 or 8.
Sure.
Or if we did, then then damn, just hiding a bunch of shit from us, huh?
I missed a point I wanted to make about Bob. Tom, the researcher who dug up all the information on Bob, thinks that the UFO he had caught on film was a particle beam. And he really, Tom, the guy who has this website, you should go to it if you want more information about Bob. It's called otherhand.org. He archived all his old Bob there, but he does a bunch of he's done search and rescue shit. He has a physics degree, like a legit physics degree.
Right.
And he looked into Bob really deeply throughout the whole 90s, and he thinks that what Bob caught on film is a particle beam being dumped into the atmosphere. And he went and did the physics on it, and he asked guys, people who were more steeped in particle physics, and they said if a particle beam was shot into the air in such a manner, it would create a ball of plasma at a certain point that would look like a giant light in the sky.
I mean, you can debunk anything,
yeah,
especially nowadays. And you can.
It's just interesting because the UFO footage looks like a laser pointer, and that's exactly what a
Honestly,
like a proton beam would look like if you were pointing it in the sky. You'd be able to move it around and
9 times out
whatever.
of 10, you wouldn't be able to actually get a photo of a UFO.
Yeah.
Because they move so fast.
They move too fast. Yeah.
There was when I was at Air 51, we went to the restaurant. There was walls and walls filled with like all these old photos.
Terrible pictures.
Oh God, they're
terrible.
Just blur.
Yeah.
There were some that were so good though, and they were like on those old little like Polaroid cameras.
Yeah. So you can't really fake them.
But the coolest part is that they did side by side of split-second images. So like one would be what the camera took, the first shot, and then it was like what it took again. Like I don't know how. I guess like the shutter. Or I don't know how this works.
Sure.
Please, everyone who's a photographer is like roll.
Jesus Christ.
Guys. But it's the photos were side by side of like what the camera took and then what it really took. Yeah. Like when you, I guess like change the contrast.
The film or whatever.
What's behind the actual image, then you see the UFO.
Okay.
Like it doesn't appear to the human eye until you like tamper with it.
That's crazy.
And that's wild to me. Like
honestly.
So even if I even tried to take a photo of whatever it was, I would literally have to be snapping like a million times just to get like that split second. God. It probably would have been blurry, or it would probably would have been camouflaged probably.
Yeah.
And if I did get it, I'd probably have to manipulate the photo enough to where it wouldn't be seen by a human. It would have to just be like
just like a split-second shutter.
Yeah.
Yeah. We really have to wrap up, guys. But thank you for tuning in to our first. We had a lot of fun doing it. We hope you had fun listening to it. Yes. Please like us on, or like leave a review on our podcast. That's what podcast people say, right?
Yeah.
Leave a review, 5 stars, and
Wait, no. Like I guess like a like button.
Real quick, our Instagram handle currently is #wildpod @#wildpod, but we would love to have the handle
#wild.
It's taken.
#wild.
It's taken right now. Yeah. So if you could do us a huge favor, you don't have to give us 5 stars. If you want to help us out, you could just go to Instagram and report the account. That's at #wild.
Like 5 followers?
I think it's like, I don't know, like 100. It's like a picture of a dog. Just please go report that account for us. Yeah, we'll love you forever. And that's pretty much the pod, guys.
Yeah, and don't storm Air 51.
Please don't get killed. Please don't get killed.
We don't want that on our
We really don't want.
I've been there. It's really not that exciting.
We really